everyone, my name is Maddie, and this is my Marvel comic breakdown. Welcome to episode 6. If you're new to my corner of YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and for all my returning friends, it's great to see you again. We've got a seriously exciting lineup for today, jam-packed with heroes, villains, and plot lines that would make even the most hardened supervillain do a double take. But before we dive in, quick reminder, make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let's get started. The next 4 comics are in the Marvel Mystery Comic number 8. They were all released in April 1940. The next comic is titled The Boomeranged Holdup. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Al Anders. It kicks off with our character Mexican Pete, who witnesses a bank heist where the teller is tragically shot. He decides to track down these bad guys, and along the way, bumps into our masked vigilante, the Masked Raider. Together, they're determined to serve some cowboy-style justice. The Masked Raider starts to question why these criminals would target a bank that was not exactly rolling in the dough. A crucial piece of the puzzle, an old forgotten scrap of newspaper at the crime scene. Fast forward to a saloon showdown in Rio Chaquiques, I don't know. Our hero gets the jump on the bandits, but it doesn't go quite as planned, and the Masked Raider ends up getting knocked out cold. And this is where it heats up, literally. A lantern gets knocked over, and our hero and the loot are left to burn. But don't worry, Mexican Pete swoops in for the rescue, grabbing the loot bag as well. And now comes the big reveal. The Masked Raider, aka our resident detective, pieces together the real reason behind the robbery. The bank manager, far from an innocent victim, was embezzling his customers' money. Facing an imminent audit and likely exposure, he planned the whole charade, going as far as to commit murder to keep his secret safe. But you know what they say about the truth, it always comes out. The bank manager is arrested, and our cowboy heroes, Mexican Pete and the Masked Raider, ride off into the sunset, dodging the thank you parade. This story not only gives us an adrenaline-fueled pursuit of justice, but also the classic tale of greed and deception. The narrative cleverly intertwines elements of mystery and action, making it a fantastic example of how multi-layered comic book stories can be. This next comic is titled The Crook Who Controlled Electro. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Steve Dahlman. So our story continues with Boss Sapro, who's all set on capturing the Electro robot. His gang storms the Electro building, snatches Professor Zog, and you can guess what happens next. They force poor Zog to use Electro to free Sapro. Under the threat of his life, Zog is coerced to orchestrating robberies and even kidnapping the district attorney Rupert Hayden. Despite the authorities' best efforts, Electro seems unstoppable in its crime spree. Now, here's where the story becomes a little unexpected. We zoom out of our earthly drama to the distant planet Ligra, where Jago, the king of the Dragon Men, has been scheming. The minute he learns about Electro, he thinks bingo, and sees the robot as a perfect tool to overthrow the ruling lion men of his planet. So what does Jago do? He sends his troops on an interstellar joyride to Earth, where they storm Sapro's hideout, and let me tell you, they wipe the floor with these guys. And if Professor Zog hadn't been through enough, he's forced to board this alien ship with Electro, bound for a galaxy far, far away. And that's Ligra. This storyline packs in everything from an earthbound crime spree to cosmic power struggles. The creators managed to cleverly weave in elements of science fiction and crime thriller, highlighting the limitless potential of comic book storytelling. It's going to be fascinating to see where this intergalactic adventure takes us next. This next comic is titled Battle with Blackie, Giles. It was written by Stockbridge Winslow and illustrated by Erwin Hassan. We've got our dude, the ferret, finding himself in the wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe it's the right place, right time, depending on how you see it. Our guy is just out there, minding his own business, waiting to deposit some money at the bank when he stumbles upon Blackie Giles in the middle of a robbery. Now, Blackie, he's not one for witnesses, so he tries to take out the ferret. But surprise, surprise, the ferret's got a secret weapon, his bulletproof vest. Unfortunately, Blackie and his gang still manage to escape with the stolen money. Now here's where things get interesting. The ferret convinces the arriving police inspector to not publicize his involvement in the robbery. He's got a plan. He puts an ad in the paper, basically daring Blackie to pay him for his silence. And as expected, Blackie takes the bait. They kidnap the ferret, and in an attempt to send him to sleep with the fishes, they strip him of his bulletproof vest and shoot him. But they only graze him, and while they're busy elsewhere, our quick-thinking ferret turns the tables. He takes down the gang, commandeers the ship, and brings it back to the port, delivering the crooks straight into the arms of the authorities. It's an excellent demonstration of the ferret's cunning and tactical prowess. Instead of just chasing the crooks, he uses himself as bait, setting a trap they just cannot resist. It's also an interesting exploration of the theme of vulnerability. Even with his bulletproof vest removed, the ferret is never truly defenseless. It shows us that the ferret's true strength lies not in his gear, but in his quick thinking and resilience. An unexpected but thoroughly enjoyable storyline. The next comic is titled Gold and Greed. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Ben Thompson. Next up, we dive into an adventure with Barry Richards, who has just inherited his father's gold mine. He gets an engineer, Lester Drake, on board to help him out, but things take a dark turn when Lester suggests using slaves to mine the gold. Barry, being the good guy, is like, no freaking way, that's not happening. But then Barry falls into a game trap and breaks his ankle. Lester, seeing an opportunity, kills him and forges documents to make it look like Barry sold him the mine. Lester then teams up with a slave trader chief, Abwama, and they use enslaved tribespeople to train elephants to mine the gold. But one of the tribe leaders reaches out to our jungle hero, ka-zar, for help. Ka-zar attempts to free the slaves, but ends up falling into the same trap as Barry. Captured, he's left to be trampled by elephants. But ka-zar isn't called the jungle lord for nothing, right? He persuades the elephants to help him and orders them to stampede the hut where Lester and Abwama are taking a nap, leading to, let's say, crushing end for the two men. After the chaos, ka-zar frees the slaves and returns to his jungle home. Analyzing this, we see that ka-zar's role as the jungle hero is really brought to light here. Not only does he stand up against the inhumane practice of slavery, but he also uses his unique abilities to communicate with animals to turn the situation around. This story also touches on themes of greed and power, showing how these can lead to an individual's downfall. And Lester's use of deceit to gain control over the mine shows that illegal activities will eventually catch up to the person involved, in this case in a quite literal stampede of justice. The next 6 comics are in the Marvel Mystery Comics number 9. They were all released in May 1940. This next comic is titled The Battle of the Comic Century. It was written by Bill Everett, Carl Burgos, John Compton, and Ray Gill, and illustrated by Bill Everett and Carl Burgos. After their first encounter, Namor, our anti-hero Submariner, is all set for a round 2 with the Human Torch. He snags a canister of compressed air to throw the torch off, luring him to the Statue of Liberty. A showdown ensues, and thanks to a splash of compressed air, our flaming hero is knocked out cold and into the water. But Namor accidentally traps the torch in an air bubble when he attempts to take him back to Atlantis, allowing the torch to escape. Back at police headquarters, the torch reports his findings, and once again, Betty Dean tries to convince the torch that Namor is not all bad. But a broadcast by Namor challenging the torch flips his switch, and he zooms off to confront him. This leads to an epic battle in the city reservoir, where Namor, weakened by the chlorine in the water, gets a literal taste of his own medicine. Despite a series of clashes and setbacks, both heroes refuse to back down. They each seek out a chemical solution to their problem, which leads a fierce confrontation at the Topre Chemical Company. In the end, Namor manages to encase the torch in a translite case, cutting him off from the oxygen he needs to fuel his flame. But it's a stalemate situation, since the Submariner can't move the case without potentially freeing the torch. Talk about being stuck in between a rock and a hard place. From an analysis point of view, the struggle between Namor and the Human Torch symbolizes the conflict between the natural world and human technology. Namor, as a representative of the ocean, has to adapt to technological strategies to stand against the Torch, who is the embodiment of human-created fire. The stalemate they find themselves in speaks volumes about the delicate balance between these two aspects of our world. This issue leaves us in suspense, wondering who will outsmart the other in the end. The next comic is titled The Mad Doctor of Carlburg. It was written by Paul Gustafson and Ray Gill and illustrated by Paul Gustafson. The Angel is in the small European town of Carlburg during the dreaded Night of the Vampire. The townies are shaken in their boots, but the Angel isn't one to fall for some old superstition. So he decides to poke around when he hears a damsel in distress. Donning his hero getup, he takes on a guy trying to nab a young lady. Post-rescue, the Angel tries to rally the townsfolk at a local inn, and the innkeeper freaks out and shuts the place down. Our guy's on his own. Our hero then heads up to the eerie castle and peeps in through the window. No vampires here. Instead, he finds a mad scientist trying to swap minds between a human and an ape. Yeah, you heard me right. Unseen no more, the Angel dives into action, saving the girl and battling the minions. The plot thickens when the ape entangles itself in machinery, triggering an explosion. With an acrobat leap from a window, Angel carries the rescued woman to safety as the castle blows up. His parting words to her tell the town that their nights of terror are now over. This narrative plays with classic horror tropes, the terror of the supernatural, the fear of the unknown, and the mad scientist, testing the boundaries of nature. But at its heart, it's a story about bravery, about facing your fears, real or imagined. It's a call to rational thinking, to skepticism in the face of unfound superstition, embodied by our hero, the Angel. The next comic is titled The Stagecoach Bandits. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Al Anders. This time, our trusty vigilante, the Masked Raider, puts a halt to a spree of stagecoach robberies in Lawson City. His pal, Mexican Pete, tips him off about a shady character named Shep Hansen, who's been boasting about finding a secret gold mine. Doesn't that seem a little fishy to you? Our hero thought so too. So he concocts a scheme to catch these gold thieves red-handed, teaming up with the gold mine owner, the sheriff, and a local gold assayer. Here's the plan. They lace the next gold shipment with a lead solution and send it off on a stagecoach without a guard. Perfect bait for the robbers. The sheriff then plants himself at the assayer's office, waiting for Shep to come in with his stolen loot. It's a checkmate when they confirm that Shep's gold is the stolen stash. But when the sheriff tries to slap the cuffs on him, he gets knocked out cold. Don't fret though, because our trusty heroes, the Masked Raider and Mexican Pete, are hot on Shep's trail. With some swift action, they apprehend the goons and hand Shep over to the sheriff. Once behind bars, the Masked Raider reveals how they outsmarted Shep. Analyzing the storyline, it takes us back to the classic Wild West narratives with an added twist. It highlights clever strategizing, teamwork, and justice being served, reminding us that even in the lawless Wild West, no crime goes unpunished. It's a perfect blend of suspense, action, and wit, which makes it all the more appealing to its audience. The next comic is titled On the Planet Ligra. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Steve Dolman. Last time we left Professor Zog and Electro, they were in a pretty tough spot on their way to Planet Ligra. Now, in the latest twist, Jago, the fierce leader of the Dragon Men, is torturing Zog into using Electro to help him seize control from the Lion People and make himself the ruler of Ligra. Jago sends one of his scouts with a surrender message to Queen Nara, but she's a fighter, and she flat out refuses. So Jago forces Zog to use Electro to battle the Lion People. As the war rages on, Jago kidnaps Queen Nara and demands the location of her royal jewels. She stays strong, refusing to give in, even when threatened by Jago's giant octopus. Now that's a queen. Meanwhile, our professor finds his chance to escape and seizes it. And here's where it gets pretty freaking epic. Zog uses Electro to turn the tide in battle, sending the Dragon Men into retreat. They rush back to Jago's castle, defeat the octopus, and save the queen. Jago and his minions try to escape in their rocket ship, but Electro captures the ship and throws it into a nearby lake. It's a fitting end, don't you think? Our villains meet their watery doom. In the end, Queen Nara thanks Zog for his aid, and he, being the hero that he is, tells her that he'd be there to help should the Lion People ever need him again. This comic was filled with suspense and thrilling turns. It brilliantly highlighted Professor Zog's determination, Electro's power, and Queen Nara's strength, while portraying a power struggle in a fantastical alien world. It's a perfect example of how comics transcend earthly boundaries and take readers on interstellar adventures. The next comic is titled The Trouble at Stacey Cleaners. It was written by Stockbridge Winslow and illustrated by Erwin Hassan. This time, our hero, the Ferret, is caught up in a terror campaign against Stacey Cleaners. During a recent attack, Ferret spots a familiar face, Frankie, who was supposed to have left his criminal past behind. In search of answers, Ferret investigates at the plant while the manager, Mr. Martin, receives a mysterious phone call. Martin breaks the news to Ferret that Brown, one of Stacey Cleaners' co-owners, fell victim to a deadly bomb blast. And Martin, he's fearing for his life. Ferret rushes to the scene, where he spots Frankie again in the crowd, but he's taken down by Frankie's boss, the Hook. The Ferret wakes up in Hook's apartment with a ticking bomb as a chilling welcome. But, as always, Ferret is quick on his feet, or in this case, his bed. He saves himself by folding the bed into the wall, which gives the Murphy beds a whole new appeal. Our hero then chases down Hook and his goons, cleverly causing a car crash with just a thrown rock. But Ferret isn't done yet. After apprehending the crooks, he confronts Mr. Martin, who had orchestrated the entire terror campaign. Ferret deduces that Martin wanted to pin the blame on business rivals and eliminate Brown, who opposed Martin's partnership in the company. This story brilliantly blends mystery, suspense, and action. The character development of Ferret, coupled with the intricate plot, keeps us on the edge of our seats. It's a fine example of how comics continue to provide unpredictable plot twists and immersive narratives. The next comic is titled The Rescue of Rita Gray. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Ben Thompson. ka-zar returns to his home only to be greeted by a terrified girl's scream. Zar jumps into action, rescuing her from Mjaga, the menacing leopard. The girl turns out to be Rita Gray, the lost daughter of an intrepid explorer. Rita's story is a classic tale of survival and luck. She finds herself lost in the jungle, separated from her father by an unexpected raft ride. ka-zar, ever the noble hero, agrees to guide her back home, but the journey is anything but smooth. The duo find themselves under attack by the Wobbies, a tribe of malicious people. In a tactful move, ka-zar sends Zar, his trusty pet, to summon Traja, the elephant. In the meantime, he takes Rita up the side of a mountain, stabbing off the Wobbies until reinforcements arrive. And indeed, Traja arrives just in time, causing the Wobbies to flee into the jungle. ka-zar, Rita, and Traja then embark on a triumphant ride back to her father's camp. The reunion between Rita and her father is touching, a classic scene of joy and relief. Despite being offered a chance to leave the jungle and join their outpost, ka-zar declines. He maintains that his rightful place is in the jungle, encapsulating his primal spirit and his unwavering bond with nature. This issue exhibits excellent storytelling with suspense, action, and a sense of camaraderie. It emphasizes ka-zar's heroism and his unshakable connection with the jungle, making for an intriguing and engaging narrative. The next 8 comics are in the Marvel Mystery Comics number 10. They were all released in June 1940. The next comic is titled The Human Torch and the Submariner. It was written by Bill Everett, Carl Burgos, and John Compton, and illustrated by Bill Everett and Carl Burgos. Our scene starts with Submariner, who has successfully trapped the Human Torch inside a translite tube, effectively cutting off Torch's access to the air he requires to ignite his flame. However, the Submariner finds himself in a bit of a bind. If he lifts the tube, it would expose Torch to the air, reigniting his powers. It's a classic stalemate situation, quite a tension-filled scene, isn't it? Just when things are looking perpetually stuck, enter Betty Dean and the police force. Betty plays the negotiator, convincing Namor to release Torch, promising in return they would leave him alone if he agrees to depart from New York. And surprisingly, Submariner, known for his defiance, agrees. He releases the Torch and decides to head back to his home in Atlantis. Quite an unexpected turn of events. This storyline illustrates the delicate balance of power between these two superhuman characters. Even though Submariner initially had the upper hand, he could not capitalize on it without giving Torch an opening. Additionally, the role of non-superhuman characters like Betty Dean further adds complexity to the plot. They influence the decisions and actions of our superhuman characters, reminding us that sometimes diplomacy can be as powerful as superhuman strength. The next comic is called The Gasoline Profiteering Racket. It was written and illustrated by Carl Burgos. The Human Torch is back in his beat cop role after a major showdown with Submariner. His day starts off with a bang, literally, when he comes across the wreckage of an Atwell gas station. He finds some grenade fragments, and it doesn't take a super brain to figure out that this explosion was no accident. Cut to Palmer, our new baddie of this issue, who's a gasoline racketeer. Palmer's been threatening Atwell to raise his gas prices, or else he'll blow Atwell's main plant sky high. Back at Police HQ, the Human Torch's concerns are initially dismissed by his chief. However, their skepticism is short-lived, as Atwell himself storms in demanding police protection. The chief then assigns Torch to protect Atwell's main plant. Exiting the station, Torch and his partner thwart an assassination attempt on Atwell by some of Palmer's men. Once at Atwell's main plant, Torch spots a mole in the system, Security Officer Riley. Riley's revealed to be in cahoots with Palmer when he sends a speeding gas truck hurtling toward the plant. The Torch quickly melts the truck with his flame powers, preventing a catastrophic explosion. Riley's attempts to coordinate an aerial bombing of the plant is also foiled by our fiery hero, who destroys the bomb mid-air and brings down the perpetrators. Our episode wraps up with the Torch confronting Palmer, who, despite getting the initial drop on him, is eventually forced to surrender by Torch's flame powers. This narrative showcases the Human Torch's dual identity as a superhuman and a police officer. It's an interesting juxtaposition that adds depth to his character. We also see his quick thinking and problem-solving skills in high-stress situations. Palmer and Riley, on the other hand, represent stereotypical villains with greedy motives. It's classic good versus evil, but with a superhero twist. The next comic is titled Hostilities Renewed. It was written and illustrated by Bill Everett. So, post-scuffle with the Human Torch, our undersea prince, Namor, heads back to Atlantis. But the journey home is a bit of a downer since his mission was a flop. After 2 days of cruising in his aerosub, he's home sweet home. But things just go from bad to worse when he shares his defeat with the Emperor, who benches him from active service. Talk about a tough day at the office. Meanwhile, on the surface, Luther Robinson and Lynn Harris have been keeping an eye on Namor's antics. They decided it was time to act against Namor. So Luther hires Captain Bob and his crew to track down Atlantis and launch an attack. Using spotlights to draw Namor to the surface, a sea battle ensues between the surface dwellers and Atlantis' military fleet. During this skirmish, Namor turns the tides and captures Lynn, taking her aboard his aerosub. Luther, playing the hero, follows in hot pursuit in his own sub, launching a torpedo that blows Namor's vessel to smithereens. Luckily, Lynn is unharmed and rescued by Luther, leaving them hoping they've seen the last of the Submariner. But in a classic cliffhanger, Namor survives and swears vengeance on the surface dwellers who dared to invade his home. This narrative explores the consequences of Namor's failures, his reaction to them, and how they drive his future actions. Meanwhile, Luther and Lynn represent the surface dwellers' growing concern about the threat from below. It's a thrilling play of power dynamics and plenty of tension, setting the stage for an exciting next issue. The next comic is titled The Ghouls of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was written by Paul Gustafson and Ray Gill and illustrated by Paul Gustafson. It starts with a woman who gets abducted from her room by these freaky-ass ghouls from the center of the earth. Now, one of these captives manages to break free, which kickstarts a hot pursuit by the ghouls. But they didn't count on the angel stepping in. He's been called in to help some hunters tackle these creatures. He takes out one of them, but then rushes headfirst into the ghoul's lair and ends up outnumbered and caught in a trap. The angel and the other captives are all set to become a a fiery sacrifice in a lava pool. But in a twist of fate, the lava starts to erupt and scares the living daylights out of the ghouls. That's when the cavalry arrives. A band of hunters comes to the rescue. The angel helps the captive women escape, but then things take a turn for the worst. He's knocked into the pit of molten lava. As he's trying to climb back up, he's totally oblivious to the fact that a creature is lurking in the shadows behind him. This story sets up an intense cliffhanger. It presents the angel in a precarious situation, grappling with external threats and mounting tension. It's also a clear example of heroism, as he prioritizes the safety of the captives over his own. This suspenseful ending serves as a brilliant hook for the next issue, and it must have got people itching to know what happens next. The next comic is titled Master of the Living Dead. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Steve Dolman. Dr. Bruno Veras is chilling on his private island off the coast of Cuba. He's cooked up a synthetic blood formula, and it's not for any medical breakthrough. Oh no, he's using it to bring the dead back to life. Yeah, you heard me right. We're talking about zombies, okay? And not just a couple. Veras has got a whole army of the undead, thanks to his loyal hunchback minion, Miguel, who's been busy grave robbing in America. He then dispatches his zombie army to major cities to wreak havoc. The authorities are clueless about how to stop the Walking Dead. So the president calls in Professor Zog for some heavy lifting. Zog sends Electro, his super robot, to tackle the creatures. But Veras is ready for him, sending a two-headed monster to haul Electro back to his lair and toss him in a vat of acid. But Professor Zog isn't giving up that easily. He boosts Electro's power, allowing the robot to break free. In an epic twist, Electro tosses Dr. Veras into the acid, taking him out. Then an airstrike obliterates Veras' base, and Electro is sent to finish off the remaining undead army. This storyline gives us a dose of science fiction and horror combined, with the classic battle between good and evil. It highlights the inventiveness and resilience of Professor Zog and the indomitable strength of Electro. It's also a testament to the way comic book narratives can blend elements of different genres to create exciting and suspense-filled plots. The next comic is titled Treachery in Two Forks. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Al Anders. So, our hero, the Masked Raider, stumbles upon Jonathan Gregg, a tax collector who's been fatally shot. With his dying breath, Gregg spills the beans. Some outlaw shot him to steal his tax papers. Why? To impersonate him, roll into Two Forks and make off with the town's tax money. The Raider, being the hero he is, plans to warn the sheriff, but this bad guy overhears and beats him to it, convincing the sheriff that he's Gregg and that the Raider killed his partner. Now, the sheriff is hot on the Raider's trail, who makes a daring escape. Undeterred, our hero dons his costume and sneaks into the sheriff's place, hoping to convince him of the truth. But the sheriff is not buying it. So what's the hero to do? Well, the Masked Raider decides to kidnap the sheriff's daughter, Sally, promising her safe return if the sheriff delivers a decoy letter to Gregg. But don't worry, Sally soon realizes that the Raider is a good guy, and she decides to play along. Fast forward to the next day. The sheriff hands over the letter to Gregg, and it's supposedly from a colleague of the real Gregg planning to visit to Two Forks. Gregg freaks out, fearing his cover will be blown, and while he's planning his getaway, who should he run into but the Masked Raider? The Raider plays his hand brilliantly, pretending to want a cut of the stolen money in exchange for silence. In his desperation, Gregg confesses to killing the real tax collector, and guess who hears it? Sally and the sheriff. Busted. Gregg is carted off to jail, the truth finally revealed. This storyline is a classic Western comic tale filled with suspense and dramatic twists. It highlights the quick thinking and cunning of the Masked Raider and the importance, trust, and communication in thwarting evil plans. It also serves as a reminder that truth and justice will always prevail. The next comic is titled The Murder of a Man Without a Will. It was written by Ray Gill and illustrated by Bob Ospner. Now we're joining Terry Vance, a boy detective, and his trusty sidekick, an ape named Dr. Watson. They're knee-deep in an experiment when they catch wind of two murders happening simultaneously. Always up for an adventure, they split up, Terry checking out one crime scene and Dr. Watson heading to the other. Arriving at the first scene, Terry gets a warm welcome from the police, who let him snoop around. Noticing a bullet hole in a coat on a rack, he uncovers a hidden remote-controlled pistol. Bingo! The murder weapon. With no more leads at this scene, he decides to join Dr. Watson at the other site. Meanwhile, our ape friend stumbles into a trap door, dropping into a secret cavern. Spotting a mysterious figure, he quickly snaps a photo. Terry arrives soon after, and the pair slip into the hidden tunnel, eavesdropping on a conversation between police and the murder victim's assailants. They uncover a classic murder mystery setup: a wealthy doctor killed without leaving a will, a property in dispute, and a stepson with a grudge. As Terry and Dr. Watson snoop around, they're caught off guard by someone lurking in the shadows. A chase ensues ensues, leading Terry to a room with the remains of a burned document by a fireplace. Using ultraviolet light, he uncovers the hidden text. It's the doctor's will. Snapping a quick photo for evidence, they're suddenly ambushed by the mystery man again, but this time Dr. Watson knocks him out. Pulling him into the room with the investigators, Terry unmasks the stranger. He's the murder doctor's estranged stepson. Terry lays out the crime for everyone. The stepson killed the doctor and his lawyer and burned the will, hoping to inherit a fortune he'd been denied, as the will left everything to the doctor's aides. This comic storyline is a classic detective story with a twist, featuring a young boy and his ape sidekick solving a complex murder mystery. It emphasizes the importance of keen observation, quick thinking, and teamwork in solving problems. Plus, it adds an element of surprise and excitement with the reveal of the murderer's identity and motivation. The next comic is titled A Visit from Scotland Yard. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Ben Thompson. Our story starts in the heart of the action with two detectives from Scotland Yard nabbing a notorious murderer known as London Jack. But their plan to bring him to justice hits a snag when their plane has to make an unexpected landing in the Belgian Congo. Seizing the opportunity, Jack wriggles free, manages to snatch one of the detectives' guns, and ties them up. With a rudimentary knowledge of flying, Jack jumps into the repaired plane, aiming to make a swift escape. From the jungle, the whole escapade is witnessed by none other than ka-zar. He springs into action, sending his trusty lion to fetch No-No, the monkey, to help free the detectives while he chases down Jack. In a daring feat, ka-zar leaps aboard the fleeing plane and battles Jack until he's forced to land. By the time they're back on the ground, No-No has used ka-zar's knife to free the captive detectives, who swiftly take London Jack back into custody. They extend an invite to ka-zar to return with them to civilization, but he politely declines, stating his love for the jungle, his true home. This tale really exemplifies the primal charm of ka-zar's character. He's a guardian of the jungle, living in harmony with nature and using his strength and wit to maintain justice. But it also showcases his self-sufficiency and independence, as he chooses the wild freedom of the jungle over the confines of civilization. The next two comics are from the Red Raven comics #1. They were both released in May of 1940. The next comic is titled The Origin of the Red Raven. It was written by Joe Simon and illustrated by Louis Casanove. In the depths of our memory lane, a commercial plane fatefully collides with the airborne home of the avian bird people. Amongst the wreckage, a single young boy is the sole survivor. Even though the boy is devoid of wings, the leader of the bird people compassionately adopt him. As the boy matures, he is bestowed with the title of the Red Raven, equipped with mechanical red wings, allowing him the gift of flight. The king of the bird people then sends him on a mission to return to the human world to combat the forces of evil. Making his way to a city on the surface, the Red Raven dons a civilian disguise, observing the city grappling with a severe unemployment crisis. The Red Raven's strength and agility become evident when he confronts a man in a job line. Zelmo, the mastermind behind the city's economic troubles, spots the Raven's display of power and wants him to join his forces. The Raven, however, refuses to align with evil, leading to an intense battle where Zelmo is defeated. However, the Red Raven's mission is not over yet. He seeks the approval of his king to recover the remaining stolen gold. Though his invented gold detecting device fails, he skillfully uses a ruse to lure the remaining culprits to him. In a gripping climax, he overcomes the centrifugal force of Ratoga's vibrato machine and uses his device to trap the crooks under their own ill-gotten riches. The Red Raven finally leads the authorities to the stolen gold, resolving the city's economic woes and standing as the beacon of hope for the people. This narrative tells us much about the Red Raven's character. He is compassionate and unwavering in the face of evil. He fights not for personal gain, but for the greater good. His blend of strength, intellect, and strategic thinking all combine to make him a truly engaging character, representing the enduring appeal of superhero narratives. I have the hiccups. Oh my god. The 100th comic in this series is titled The Origin of the Human Top. It was written and illustrated by Dick Briefer. In this issue, Bruce Prevel, a willing participant in a bold scientific experiment, embarks on a path that will alter his life forever. A scientist is on the verge of discovering how humans can derive nourishment from electricity. In the middle of the experiment, a bolt of lightning strikes the castle where they are working, causing an explosion. Upon examination, the scientist discovers that Bruce has been charged with opposing magnetic forces on both halves of his body. With the power to spin at super speed when his wrists touch, Bruce embraces his newfound abilities and transforms into the crime-fighting Human Top. Venturing into the world as the Human Top for the first time, he employs his super speed spinning abilities to prevent a collision between two speeding cars and a train. Upon realizing that he has halted a police chase against two robbers, the Human Top retrieves the stolen money and returns it to the rightful owner, Horace Vandiver, the owner of the National Bank. However, his moment of heroism is abruptly shattered when the banker pulls out a gun gun and tries to shoot him. Unfazed, the human top takes Vandiver by surprise, spins him up, and leaves him with the stolen money. The subsequent day, accusations of the human top's involvement in the bank robberies surface, leading him to discover that Vandiver had not returned the money. In a quest for justice, he tracks down the fugitive banker aboard his yacht. Despite being captured and restrained by Vandiver's men, a timely rainfall gives him the current needed to activate his powers. He breaks free and chases Vandiver, trapping him on top of a flagpole. The top threatens to drop him unless he confesses his crimes. With the promise of a confession, the human top hands Vandiver over to the authorities and swiftly departs, leaving the terrified banker to reveal his devious schemes. In this narrative, the character of the human top is portrayed as not just a superhero, but also a clever and resourceful individual. He is dedicated to justice and will use his powers to protect the innocent and expose the guilty. Despite initial setbacks and accusations, he remains committed to the truth, exhibiting qualities of persistence and resilience. It also reveals the complexity of heroism, as it shows how heroes can often be misunderstood or falsely accused. Yet, true heroes persist in the face of adversity, reflecting the very essence of the human top's character. As we reach the end of episode 6, I hope you've enjoyed your journey through these narratives filled with action, adventure, and suspense. Our characters, driven by determination and a relentless quest for justice, have overcome trials and adversaries, reminding us of the unwielding power and courage and righteousness. From the depths of the sea to the heights of avian civilizations, from secret caverns to bustling city streets, we have explored diverse settings and met compelling characters. We've seen good triumph over evil and truth expose deceit. Thank you for joining me in these tales, and I hope they've captured your imagination, entertained you, and perhaps even made you ponder the complexity of heroism and morality. As we wrap up this episode, I look forward to the continued journey, so as we close the book on episode 6, stay tuned for what's to happen next. Our journey continues, our heroes remain vigilant, and the story unfolds. Until next time, stay curious, keep reading, and remember every page turn is a new adventure waiting to unfold. Catch you in the next one.